Yep. Okay. Okay.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Zion, be kind enough to read the mission statement? Thank you. I don't see any public participation. Is there any from the board? Very well, no public participation. I will need a motion to accept the items under the consent agenda. Items are the regular session minutes from the November 15th, 2021 Board of Education meeting. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes from the November 15th, 2021 Board of Education meeting? Sorry? Betty? Second? Ronette? Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Move on to Superintendent's report. Dr. Scarpetti?
Thank you, Mr. Kraut. Good evening, board members. I hope you and your families, as well as everyone watching at home, had an enjoyable Thanksgiving. As expected and also predicted, COVID cases have increased since the Thanksgiving break. As I have communicated the COVID cases that have occurred to the board, so have principals to their parents whose children have been involved in positive cases. For any of you who are interested in the number of COVID cases impacting all the schools, please be reminded the district COVID-19 dashboard is updated every Friday. This will include the most current number of staff and students who are quarantining due to being COVID positive or a close contact. The COVID-19 dashboard is located on the main page of the district's website. We are continually doing our best to minimize the impact of those cases at the schools due to the mitigating factors that we have implemented and the contact tracing by the nurses and principals. On a side note, with regards to the mitigating factors, during the holiday recess, custodial staff will take advantage of this time to conduct a thorough cleaning. This will include, but not limited to, power washing of the restrooms, sanitizing high touch points, scrubbing and buffing floor surfaces, deep cleaning of carpets, and probably the most important factor that we heard of is opening windows in order for circulation of fresh air to occur. That said, we thank our parents for their communication with their school nurses when their children have the slightest of symptoms and keep their children home. I think, I know much of our discussions have been surrounded by the pandemic and the cases of COVID, but we are still addressing our main operations, mainly the budget currently. We will have the budget workshops held starting in January. Once we get dates on those, we'll be contacting all of you with those dates. The other piece that we've been focusing on that we'll never forget is our school safety. All crisis drills have been held at each of our schools. We acknowledge our students and faculty as we practice these drills, along with the police and fire department who also participate in this process. As we know, these procedures are essential at this time, which has prepared us for the matter all schools in the state and throughout the country had to deal with this past Friday. As the board knows, we do not go into details of the systems that have been implemented regarding our security measures publicly. Though I want to make sure parents and the community know, even though this was not a viable threat, it was taken seriously. Thank you to Chief Gagné for his time on Thursday as we prepared for Friday and for personally checking on our schools. To Detective Bailey, our school resource officer, who was in constant contact with me and the building principals throughout the day and all the other officers who provided additional presence at our schools. The entire community is grateful for your service, not only on Friday, but every and each day that you've supported us throughout the year. Tonight, unfortunately, Mr. Gray is unable to join us. I'll be sharing the operations report, though before I do, are there any questions at this time with the two things that I've discussed regarding safety, if there's anything I can, or the pandemic and the amount of COVID cases of increasing the cases that have been occurring at the school?
Go ahead, Mr. Ziman.
Just working off the emails, the vast majority of the 28 people listed only came up one time. So I'm thinking the measures taken to minimize the number of children affected is working as well as can be expected, and I think that's a credit to the administration, staff, and the parents working together. Beyond that, I'm wondering about if you're planning on a week of remote or something after Christmas vacation.
Currently, remote is not an option. The only time remote will be an option if there's a severe situation of COVID that's hit throughout the entire school. So right now, there's not a planned remote. In addition to that, Mr. Ziman, thank you for acknowledging that, but because of the board's support with the resources, specifically, the district substitutes have helped immensely. So we thank you for that support that we predicted and that we thought we would need throughout this year. Yes, Mr. Kraut. So in the past, we've talked about ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 grants as a reminder to the board. ESSER is the elementary and secondary schools emergency relief. We received $164,000, which was allocated to be expended by September 30th, 2023. $38,000 was spent to date, mainly on supplies for summer school program. In addition, there was a grant received called the American Rescue Plan, known as ARP, ESSER, or ESSER 3, which was allocated of $326,000. That needs to be expended by September 30th, 2024. $94,000 was spent to date mainly on salaries for the summer school program. Both ESSER 2 and ARP ESSER grants can be used for addressing learning loss among students, purchasing educational technology, providing mental health services and supports, school facility repairs and improvements to reduce risk of virus transmission or improve indoor air quality, as well as other activities necessary to maintain the operations and continuity of services in the district. We also shared in the past, but just to be reminded, 20%, approximately $65,000 of ARP ESSER or ESSER 2 funding must be dedicated to learning loss via evidence-based intervention and should address the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 under represented student subgroups. In addition, there are grants pertaining to special education, which we shared at the subcommittee finance, which Mrs. Ito will be sharing momentarily. Also, as I shared, the budget process continues. The central office staff has consolidated the 22-23 budget submission for review, and the capital requests were submitted to the town in November for review by the ad hoc capital planning committee. So the annual process of developing the 5-year plan of short-term projects for the schools is underway. The Board of Education plan was submitted to Mr. Okenquist, who's the chairman of the ad hoc committee, last month. A copy of the plan was provided to each of the board members at our October meeting and presented to the capital planning committee on December 2nd. As a reminder, the list that were submitted to the town includes the following: the replacement of the rooftop units at Mary L. Tracy School, flooring repairs at Racebrook School's 6th grade wing, the replacement tiles at Turkey Hill School, annual smartboard replacement, and school furniture replacement for 3 classrooms at Racebrook School. Also mentioned at the subcommittee meeting was the audit that's being taken place, the 2021 Education Financial System known as EFS, and the Special Education Excess Cost Grant, the SEECG data were certified and filed earlier this fall. Seward and Mund, our auditors, are in the process of performing and agreed upon procedures. of this data collection prior to January 3rd, 2022, which is when the audit report is due. Continuing with food services, you may recall we had a supply chain issue. That continually still occurs, but it's less than what it was before. So at that time, to provide the most up-to-date communication regarding these changes, each of our school has posted a link to the lunch menu on their website homepage. If a change to the menu is required, it'll be typed in red for families to quickly note. And please be sure to check in the morning to ensure the most up-to-date options. We thank all our families for your continued patience as we navigate through these disruptions. And lastly, we are in winter, so we're getting ready for snow removal. As we anticipate the first snowfall of the year, we have completed our annual maintenance preparations to be ready. This includes attaching the plow frames to the trucks, checking the operation of the electronic and hydraulic controls, placing plow sticks along the curbing of all school parking areas, checking the operation of all snow blowers, and purchasing ice melt for each of the buildings. Any questions before I continue with the personnel report?
Go ahead.
Dr. Scarpetti, I think I'm doing my math correctly, but I'm looking at the grant money that has to be spent by the end of December 23 and the end of December 24. I think I'm looking at over $400,000 worth of money. Is that correct?
I could do the math, but approximately, you are correct, Mrs. Hadlock.
I guess I'm wondering, is there a plan in place for how it's going to be spent? Some of that money possible to be spent for the food stock? I've seen a food back necessities. And what about air conditioning? There's nothing we talked about air quality.
And so,
Are there other plans in mind?
so what our intentions are is to intentionally look at this process. As we've shared before, there are many districts that have a significant funding than we have. Instead of spending it all at once, we wanted to gradually proceed, but some of the factors that you mentioned will be in consideration of what we need to address.
Any-
Petty, the ad hoc committee, we made a submittal, and there's a process for them to answer our submittal. Do you expect when that is going to be?
They have to meet with, you're talking about the capital planning
Yes.
committee? So they have to meet with other groups, so who also presents is the police department, the town, so Public Works. I think the library also presents. So they are in that process of collecting that information first. So I present it for the Board of Ed. Other leadership will present for those subgroups, and then I think they will meet again and then start kind of finalizing of what they think and categorizing in order that what we provided, and then categorizing with all these groups coming together and saying what the decisions will be. So we usually hear in another month or so.
Another month, okay. And that might also impact, to
Correct.
Ms. Hadlock's point, that it may leave us with a gap or not.
True.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Very well. Thank you, Doctor.
And so if I may continue, Mr. Kraut, just
Sure.
a personnel update. I've shared with the board Anne Marie DePetto, who served the district for 23 years, has retired. We want to send our well wishes to Anne Marie. In addition, we have Cheryl Iannone joining as my administrative assistant. Cheryl is with us tonight. Jane Gallagher is replacing Mrs. DePetto. Jane Gallagher is the current Racebrook administrative assistant. So we're excited to having Cheryl and Jane join the central office. As that domino effect is created, that leaves 2 openings which have been posted it. And I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge Mrs. Shaw. As you know, Mrs. Shaw is not leaving us too far. She's joining the town side again. And I just want to personally thank Mrs. Shaw for her service that she's provided the board, the district, and me personally in my role as superintendent. As soon as she came on board, she was very diligent, and from my perspective, wanted things to be perfect and put a lot of time to do that. But we are going to miss you horribly, Mary. Cheryl, don't take offense to that. But we are going to miss you, Mary, and we want to thank you for all your service. And on behalf of the board and myself, Mayor, this one. And that ends my report, with the exception of just wishing everyone a happy holiday, to you and your family and everyone at home. I think we've gone through, to say the least, challenging times. Some people more challenging than others. I know I said this last year, but I'll say it again. I look forward to the new year as we continue to progress through this process of a pandemic with mitigating factors. But I do look forward to the day when schools look like schools again, and hopefully that will be sooner than later.
Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Russo.
Good evening. I'd like to share that this presentation was created by the Amity Superintendent for BOA stakeholders like the Orange Board of Education. And while she created the presentation, it does reflect the work of several BOA stakeholders, as you will see. In addition, a screencast of this presentation will be shared with teachers on Wednesday. After they view the screencast, they will provide feedback on the information through a survey by completing it and submitting it. So what is a portrait of a graduate? Or a POG, as it's sometimes called. A portrait of a graduate identifies the knowledge, skills, and dispositions that a district and its community picture or believe a student would embody or exemplify at the time of a graduation. So whether it's at an elementary graduation, middle school, or then high school. And what's really important is that vertical articulation and alignment among the different schools, and figuring out what these characteristics that the community values look like at single grade level. So then we ask ourselves, why do we want to engage in this work? And by engaging in this work, we can outline those additional skills that are above and beyond what the Connecticut Common Core, for example, says that's expected of students at graduation. And it focuses on those that our community wants students to have acquired when they graduate and they go out into the world. It's also a promise that we make to our students, and it helps us identify what supports we need to put in place so that they can graduate with those skills. It's really important to express that what is valued reflects our community values, not just school leader values, all the BOA values. So Portrait of a Graduate has a beginning and an end. We speak about the beginning. We speak about how it helps us to set board goals and other decision-making processes, like the ones we did. So let's take a moment to look at those. When we speak about the end, we speak about our aspirations, those we want nurtured and developed in our students. Also, we want benchmarks along the way so we can see how we're doing, and once again, support when necessary, and what these look like, as I said earlier, at different grade levels. And when students graduate, we want to know that they have the skills we were picturing for them. So let's talk a little bit about the process that occurred for this work. Initial steps included an executive committee with 2 middle school stakeholders, 2 high school stakeholders, the Amity superintendent. And that group participated in training about portraits of graduates. And this is not something that's made up. It's a topic that's been for discussion at the national level. This committee set timelines, planned processes, and of course, acquired the commitment of BOA superintendents, parents, and staff. And so you can see that our very own Dr. Scarpetti was part of this process, along with those other members of that executive committee. So we thank them for all their work in those initial stages. Then there were community surveys to all those key stakeholders that you see there. Over 2,000 surveys were received with over 14,000 responses. Some of the questions, you have examples here. What 3 academic skills do you feel students need to be prepared for success when they graduate from high school? Another question, if you were able to talk to your students when they start their senior year of high school, what are 3 lasting impacts you would hope that they would identify from their time at Amity Middle School? So that gives you a little bit of a flavor for the questions. The POG committee consisted of members from all 4 districts, career and college contacts, parents, and a Board of Education representative. Wordles were used as a visual way to capture the most common responses on those closed survey questions, and members looked for redundant themes. Lots of data analysis, discussion, and revision occurred, but I think it's really important to mention that opinions and interpretations were not used to identify categories. These were the original categories, which then were merged into 5 characteristics. Before I show you those characteristics, these were the members involved in that POG committee, and I was fortunate to be on that committee, so to represent Orange, and to, at that point, share all the work that we in our district have done on Portrait of a Graduate. These are the characteristics with just some explanations. However, no, actually definitions, simplified version with just definitions. And the characteristics include empathizer, collaborator, problem solver, planner, and communicator. But the definitions are important because they help you picture what that word represents with specificity. And this slide shows how each theme is defined with even more descriptors to help understand what the characteristics embody and represent. The data organization was critical, and so was the graphic design. These are the people who contributed with those talents. And so now next steps. This is an example of one presentation to BOA Boards of Education. Then there will be presentations to stakeholders, focus groups for feedback. And so, as I explained earlier, our teachers will have the opportunity to provide their feedback on these characteristics and on the descriptors on Wednesday through that survey. Once all of that feedback is collected, these characteristics will be refined and revised. Then there will be some editing for a final draft. But then really the most important work starts, and that would be, what does it look like and when do we teach these characteristics? You know, what does that look like for a kindergartner or a 3rd grader or an 8th grader? How do we teach it, and then how do we know when students attain it? So that's where the real work will begin. Don't know if anybody has any questions.
Thank you for that presentation. It was great, and I'm glad that you explained a lot of it to us. My concern is that we definitely need to make sure we're integrated into what the Portrait of the Graduate that Amity is saying that they want. we also obviously have to think about Bethany and Woodbridge, as well as Orange, making sure that we're all in alignment, which is something we've all talked about in the past. And so I am wishing everyone very well with getting this done, because there is differences of opinion of, you know, as a district, as each of the districts, what's the right way to get to the end. And so I think we have some challenges ahead of us, which I'm looking forward to. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any, go ahead, Betty.
So do you envision, elementary, these three elementary districts getting together to discuss this and set up benchmarks or rubrics or something to make sure we're all moving together and going towards the common goal?
I do, and I have to say, from the experience of looking at the 14,000 responses, community members actually were very similar in many of the responses. And sometimes, you know, different words may have been used, but the concepts underlying those words were very similar. And the other thing to remember is that Orange still has its own identity. And regardless of these characteristics that are here, they're still, you know, like the minimum. There are still other things that we can do and we can add through our curriculum. But when you look at these characteristics, they are pretty universal. You know, like a collaborator. You know, what these are the skills for the next century: being a collaborator, a communicator, empathizer, problem solver, and planner. So if you were maybe thinking of creativity, that's another way of also being a problem solver, because you have to be creative to problem solve. And then when you dig deep and you look at the definitions, you can elaborate and expand and include other characteristics.
Kathleen, so I guess one other question I have, I think it does with it, so I'll find. Would it be possible to get a copy of the survey that was done on the stakeholders?
Of course,
To see what exactly, how questions were asked?
of course.
Take a look at that.
And then I'm sure you'll be receiving the survey, because as key stakeholders, you have heard this information. You'll be looking at these characteristics, and then you can provide feedback on these characteristics. So this is not the final draft by any means. This is just of the first round.
Are you saying there'll be another survey?
Yes, there will be
A follow-up survey?
a follow-up survey on these characteristics. And feedback on the work that has been done so far.
And you said that the staff, the Orange Elementary staff is going to get a first look at this on Wednesday?
Yes. Now, the Orange Elementary staff was part of those 2,000 responses, over 2,000 responses. They put in their top 3 characteristics or qualities or dispositions, knowledge, skills that they thought Amity or Orange graduates should have when they go out into the world. So they were part of the process from the start. They'll continue to be part of the process, and parents and the focus groups who will listen to this presentation and have an opportunity to really look at these characteristics will all have an opportunity to provide feedback. And once again, it's not the school leaders, it's not just the superintendents, it's the community values. You're welcome.
In addition, if I may, Mr. Kraut, Mrs. Hadlock, there's going to be, I believe, presentations that are occurring in January, and I'll be more than happy if that Amity's going to be conducting, I believe for parents, but I'm sure board members can attend if they would like to, and I'll be more than happy to share that in a future board update too.
Thank you. If there's a public meeting of some sort, would you like to have that date available, that date sent out to us?
Absolutely.
Good, so,
We definitely want as much feedback as we can get.
So, as a follow-up, what is the timeline? When do we project that we may have that portrait of a graduate that we can start working towards?
You know what, that's a really good question. I believe that, I'm not 100%
That's okay.
positive. I'm sorry.
I was just curious. I know we have next steps, and I think they're all good, and I think it's important that you get the community feedback and, additional surveys to make
Right.
sure that everybody's going down the same path together. So if you can, let us know whether they're looking at the end of the year, whether it's next year. I was just curious.
I would think it's going to start right after when we come back from break.
Okay. So I guess personally, as a parent of a senior, if, we're going to say, okay, is our senior is actually the portrait of the graduate? That's an interesting question. Right, Jeff?
I'm sure they helped mold it. I'm sure they helped mold it.
I'm sure. Thank you.
Dr. Russo, go ahead, Carmen.
I have two observations. Basically, with the next step, we're talking about one of the goals is integration into curriculum. So I'm just curious to know if we are looking at a statement based on the integration into the students' activities. That might be something that, if we can ensure that there's a together. So the next one is teacher evaluation, where this portrait of a student, next steps and, I guess the embracing of the student, the way we're gonna look at this particular student going forward. I think that might be something that really has teacher evaluation.
Thank you for those observations.
Anyone else?
Russo. So as a non-educator, I'm sure folks have questions as I do. Portrait of a graduate is not something I hear about a lot, or I've heard about before. This looks like the way someone is setting a mission for the Amity School District, right? It's a mission statement. It's the framework for how things are going to be done. Is there some context to portrait of a graduate for those who are not educators? Like, where did that come from? Where did it originate? Did we do this 5 years ago or 10 years ago or last year? Or is this the first time we're doing this specific thing? Is it replacing something else? Can you just give me the context of where this comes from?
Sure. This is the first time that we're doing something like this, but many districts throughout the nation have already done this for several years. And this came about because leaders in the business world, in the, just out in the community, are noticing characteristics, knowledge, and skills that are necessary in a new workforce. And so it's a way to prepare students for beyond school with the dispositions, the knowledge and the skills that will help them be successful after school. I'm sure you've heard about jobs that haven't even been created yet or don't even exist yet, and how we have to prepare students who have the skills, who will be able to succeed. And so sometimes people from out in the workforce, in the community, business leaders, medicine, all those fields are making observations of what's happening in their fields and the type of skills, knowledge, dispositions that will be necessary for those fields in the future. So one great way to learn about characteristics that are critical and important is to listen to some of these people speak. And, like problem solving, that's just a skill that is critical, no matter what it is. Like we're COVID-19, so what knowledge and skills go with being able to be prepared to contribute to society, to be successful in the workforce, So that's basically where it comes from, but we have some information that we can share with board members, or we can maybe post it on our website to explain more about the portrait of a graduate. It's just kind of like, what are you picturing for a student that goes through our whole system? What will they be able to do?
One of the questions that, to sum up what Dr. Russo said, what do we want our students to know and be able to do when they leave our school district? And so since it's a regional district, Amity, they want to include all stakeholders in that. I think they're also including business owners too. They're getting
yeah.
information with regarding that. Because I think they've noticed a little bit of the umbrella of a school district, and the environment of school is much different than when you get into the workforce. And so in order for them to be successful, I think the context that you may be to your question, Mr. Vitale, is, I think that's where it stems from. What tools can we give our students and our Amity students the ability to be successful in whatever career they pursue?
So reaching out to the business community and understanding where people may be lacking coming out of school, communication skills, problem solving, I think is a terrific idea. Mike, so excellent.
And
I applaud you
those-
for that.
And those people were on the committee when I worked there. There were representatives of universities, there were community business, a lot of people from the community sharing what the community values, parents. So not just educational
Right.
leaders.
Parents are important as well. But just as a follow-up, when is this process completed, and is this something that's updated regularly, or does this become the all-encompassing, something that we follow, or are we going to see that happen slowly and get another vote and another
We'll
review?
get the definitive timeline and share it with the entire board.
Okay.
But I think the next step is having a public forum in January, and I believe it's going to be held at different times at each of the Amity schools. So I think one at Orange, Amity Middle School, Bethany Middle School campus, and then at the high school. And we'll get that information.
Great, thank you.
And it won't be changed every year if that's what you're thinking.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Mr. Ziman. Renee?
I have a question. Oh,
Oh, you okay? Okay.
hi, Dr. Russo. How are you? I just wanted to ask you, I'm thinking about this like from a curriculum perspective, like, is this going to exist alongside of like the social emotional learning in the class? So will kids be stopping their regular core subjects, doing the SEL, like the mood meter, and then also doing now work for these characteristics?
So that's the work that's ahead of us. We have to integrate the work. So some of these are academic and some are, social, emotional. But it's not going to be separate. It's going to be integrated into the curriculum. So that's where, like those last three pieces, what does it look like and when do we teach it? We don't know that yet. We have to work in our grade level teams, and we have to think about that. So we haven't gotten to that point yet because we're still not,
Okay, but you said, as you said, it's not replacing the
No.
mood meter and
No.
those. Okay,
no.
thank you.
I don't think we're going to have to spend a lot of money on this. I think by identifying it and making it clear and explicit, it just brings it more to light, and it helps everybody be on the same page, because sometimes the students don't realize, these characteristics or the descriptors that are aligned to them. But I don't see it as an add-on. I see it as integrated, and it has to make sense within the tasks and the demonstrations and the project-based assessments, and hopefully in real life or real world authentic experiences. So you have to collaborate with colleagues in the real world. So what does that look like for a kindergartner? So we have to flush it out some more.
Obviously, it's very easy for the board, so, not to be done.
Of course, our pleasure. Yes.
Good evening. I'd like to begin by sharing some information on grant funding that we received, not to confuse these grants with the funds that Dr. Scarpetti has already discussed. But ESSER 2 Special Education Recovery Activities Grant is also a new grant as part of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, the CARES Act. Congress has provided financial support for districts and schools through the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief ESSER funds. These funds offer flexibility to address critical areas of need and identified populations as they support their students, educators, and family. Orange has been allocated a total of $60,200. These funds must be expended by June 30th, 2022. This is a one-time grant. These funds have been allocated for evidence-based interventions. In the Orange Public School System, we identified special education teachers and instructional paraprofessionals to engage in ongoing professional development. Most recently, we have been able to engage in job-embedded training to help students develop concept imagery to support skills in the area of language arts and mathematics. Concept imagery is an ability to create mental representations and integrate them into language. This sensory cognitive skill underlies language comprehension and higher order thinking. Math teams will be developing and training instructional paraprofessionals in building skills for foundational math instruction. These professional learning opportunities will be ongoing and will strengthen our ability to provide targeted instruction and support. And you may recall from previous board meetings the ARP IDEA Part B grant. The American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, otherwise known as ARP, provided supplemental funding under the obligation of IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Act, Part B, for fiscal year 21 and 22. This grant is referred to as the ARP IDEA Part B grant. The Orange School District has been allocated $72,921 for the first year. Funds will be utilized for summer training for staff and will be offered related to the social emotional needs of all of our learners. On a different note, if anybody has any questions about grants, I can take those now if that's helpful. Otherwise, I'll move on.
I have one question. I know that on the most recent grant has to be expended by June of this year. So I'm assuming you have that planned?
Well, we do have them planned, but
Good.
actually, we have 2 years to spend it.
You said
It's
it
a-
was June of '22, which is this June.
The ESSER Special Education Recovery Activities have to be expended by June 30th, 2023. I'm sorry if I said 22.
That's okay, I may have
That was
heard it
my
wrong.
mistake.
Thank you.
And we do have a plan for all our year one funding, which is around the professional development, around concept imagery and math and instruction around special education and our instructional paraprofessionals.
I was just surprised that they were only giving you 6 months, but they're giving you 18 months. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Kraut, if I may, I just want to follow up with the question that was asked earlier about grants. Mrs. Hadlock brought up a good point of how much money is left to spend. Mrs. Hadlock, I can't remember what you said, but while the board meeting was going on, I did a brief calculation. I come up with $358,000. I know we talked about other elements like rooftop units and such, but the amount of money that we've spent is about $132,000 just on the summer program. If we were to calculate that out by the time we have to spend that the funding, we would actually not have enough money with the money that's left over to do it until 2024. So here are some of the things we want to balance out and not just spend right away, but we want to make sure that we are focusing on, I think, of what the intention of what these grants are for is to lessen the gap of this learning that has occurred during the pandemic. But just to follow up on the exact math and some of the thoughts that we had.
Okay. On a different note, I'm pleased to announce a parent engagement opportunity. We'll be offering a book club that will be run by our school social worker. An invitation will be sent out to all families. That will be through email and the pop-up on our website. The title of the book is How to Talk to Kids So They Will Listen and How to Listen So Kids Will Talk. Please watch for the invitation through Google Form and through our email and also through our district pop-up. Listeners may recall that the state will be introducing a new statewide IEP data collection system, or the Individual Education Plan Data Collection System, called Connecticut CT-SEDS. That stands for Connecticut Special Education Data Systems. We currently use IEP Frontline as our data portal for our IEPs. Many of the districts across the state of Connecticut use that vendor, although they do not have to. And now with this platform, which is sponsored by the state of Connecticut, it will become the only platform used throughout the state of Connecticut. This year, our special education team will be attending training sessions in order to be ready to implement the new system beginning July 1st, 2022. This new system has the potential for not only reducing costs to the districts, but also designed to improve format, flow of information, and its intuitive, easy-to-use display. On the family side, we'll have a more user-friendly document. Families will have electronic access to the IEP at all times, and IEPs and related documents will be available in many of our family native language. On the district side, data collection systems that streamline state and federal special education data will be reduced as our overall reporting responsibilities. And the option to support other systems such as SRBI, Section 504, and Gifted and Talented can also be embedded in this system. Once we have completed a full year of implementation, multiple state and federal data collections will be eliminated completely. Things like CDAC, the Special Education Data Collection Evaluation Timeline, seclusion restraints, and other such reports, which will be embedded in the CT-SED system. So these federal and state funding reports will be uploaded directly through CT SEDS. And then finally, we are accepting names for the blind lottery for the 2022-23 preschool program at Mary L. Tracy. A pop-up with additional information is currently on our district website. The deadline is 4 p.m. Friday, January 28th, to get your child's name in the lottery, and results will be reported out in February of 2022. I'd like to thank you all and wish you all a happy holiday season, and certainly I'm open for questions.
Go ahead, Sue.
Thank you, Mrs. Zito. Just to clarify, the January 28th date are for typical children that would be in the lottery for the preschool.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. Children who are identified through birth to three and referred to the district for special education consideration are automatically part of the program, and this is a special ed program that we integrate with typical peers as positive role models. Thank you for that. It was very helpful.
Carmen?
Right now, we're not fully sure because we're waiting for our responses from our current three-year-olds to find out who will be returning. But if they all return, we probably only have about 4 seats available for our 4-year-old class, but we have about 28 seats available for our 3-year-olds. We'll be able to integrate data, the demographic information through PowerSchool is my or PSIS. Yes. Yes.
We'll remind you
Well, it has gone out. It's in the newspapers, and it's also on our district website with the pop-up. And there's there's a link to additional information all about our preschool program on our website, as well as what went into the newspapers. You're welcome.
Good evening again, board members. I'm going to read the process of nominating and electing our positions of chair, vice chair, and secretary. So if you could give me a moment, that's about 8 steps that we have to go through. Please don't hesitate to ask any questions. So we will be holding the election for the officers of the Board of Education. District policy states this election is held biannually in December following the town election. There are 3 officers, chairman, vice chairman, and secretary. You should have ballots in front of you. The blue represents the chairman, the green for vice chairman, and the pink for secretary. When we begin, we will start with nominations. Any member may nominate any other member. There are no term limits. Any member may nominate him or herself. Nominations do not require seconds. There's no limit to the number of people who may be nominated for an office. When there are no more nominations, the nominations are closed and the election will take place. The election rules. They require that a winning candidate must have a majority of the eligible votes cast. In other words, a winning candidate must have 6 votes. If in the course of election for any of the offices, no one candidate gets 6 votes, the voting is repeated until one candidate gets 6 votes or another candidate withdraws. If the board was to reach a complete stalemate at no candidate was able to receive 6 votes, a motion could be made to suspend the election for that office, and the first selectman will appoint a Board of Education member to that office. In addition, and I'm not too sure what will occur this evening, but in the past, when I've been involved, only one person has been nominated for each seat. We still have to do a vote in writing. According to the policy, election of officers shall be in writing, and the vote of each member shall be made available for public inspection within 48 hours. So it may seem like, hey, Dr. Scarpetti, why do we have to do it if we're just nominating one person? That's why you have to do it in writing, even though one person may be nominated for the seat. Any questions at this time? All right, so. I'm sorry? No. No. If there are any further questions, I will be opening up the nomination for chairman. Mr. Ziman? So we have one nomination for Mr. Kraut for chairman of the board. Are there any other nominations for chairman? Seeing that there are no other nominations, please fill out your blue ballot for chairman. Once you're completed, Mrs. Shaw will collect your ballot. Yes, I don't have a ballot in front of me, but I think there's a.
I'm sorry. The result of the election for chairman, we have 10 votes for chairman.
I apologize. Thank you. Moving onward is now the vice chair. I'm opening the nominations for vice chair. Do I have any nominations for vice chair? Ms. Ricchio?
I nominate Jeff Kapp.
We have one nomination for Mr. Kapp. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Seeing that there are no other nominations, you may cast your ballot. And again, Mrs. Shaw will come by and pick up your ballot. Again, this is the green ballot for vice chair. Congratulations, Mr. Cap. And the last seat we are seeking a nomination for is for secretary. Are there any other nominating anyone for secretary? Betty, I believe your hand was up first. We have one nomination for Ms. Riccio for board secretary. Are there any others? Seeing that there are no other nominations, please fill out the ballot, the pink ballot for secretary, and Mrs. Shaw will come by and pick up your ballot.
Okay, I have the results for board secretary, and Ms. Riccio has been elected with 10 votes.
Congratulations. I now turn back the meeting to the elected chair, Mr. Kraut.
Garpetti. Thank you, all of you, for expressing confidence. As I said, I will do my best. You want me to start over? I would also like to thank the board for electing Jeff and Susan. I could not have two better people to support me and bounce ideas off and problems and everything else. They're just fantastic people and extremely dedicated to their jobs. Thank you very much. Before we move on to the student calendar, I just want to make sure everyone is aware of their committee selection sheet that Mary put at your place. Read through the, for those of you who are new, read through the descriptions. I would ask that you put in order from first to last, 1, 2, 3, committee that you may like to be on. If you have any questions, and this goes for everyone, please call me because I will be naming these committees in a few weeks. So if you have any questions about the committee, any concerns, anything, or you could actually, what has happened, members have just written little notes on the actual questionnaire. Get them back to Cheryl. You can them all by January 7th. January, because I would like to call board meetings in January, because we really haven't had any subcommittees, in a few weeks now. All right, so I will, of course, anyone who's going to be named as a chairman, I will consult that person first and make sure that that's what they would like to do. And then we'll move forward from there. Okay? So just getting back to Cheryl as soon as you can. Thank you very much. All right, so I'm going to be looking for a motion to accept the proposed 2022-2023 student calendar as presented. I'm sure you all had time to review it. Do I have a motion?
Motion to accept.
Very good. Liz, do I have a second? Carmen, any discussion on this? Susan?
I just want to reiterate, as I do each year, that I prefer us to start the calendar after Labor Day, and so that the children get, a 3-day week and a 4-day week, et cetera. So Just putting that out there again. I just like to say it, no one listens.
Thank, thank you. Anyone else? All right. Any further discussion? None? All in favor? Opposed? Abstained? You good? Okay. Second read policy 2131, Superintendent of Schools. Do I have a motion to accept policy 2131, Superintendent of Schools as presented? Susan, second. Betty, any discussion on this policy? All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Second read, policy 1212, school volunteers. Do I have a motion to accept policy 1212, school volunteers as presented? Ken, second. Ronette, any further discussion on this? Go ahead.
Yes, hi. I just have a question regarding, at the end of the policy, the registration of a person who has committed a felony for sexual purpose. Regarding that actual statute, regarding that actual statute section, is it just specific to that statute section, or is it more of a wider range? Only because that statute actually is broader, and so I have more of a question as to, is it just for a felonious offense, or does it broaden out to misdemeanors as well?
We've generally looked at it as if it was a convicted felon, not a misdemeanor.
Okay.
That was generally, but it was whatever was in that statute.
Okay. If it's something that is a concern where it, so for instance, a sexual assault can occur with a misdemeanor. So if someone, for instance, was convicted of a sexual assault of a misdemeanor, would that mean that that individual will be allowed to volunteer because it's not a felonious offense? And so I guess that's what my concern is, or my question is regarding that. Yeah, yeah, okay. I didn't know if this is something that I could should bring up here, or something that, was discussed further. It's just something that I'm familiar with, so I saw it and just have some kind of concern.
Mr. Crowd, I believe, through you, and I don't know if you had the opportunity to look at the next policy we're going to be going through.
I did.
So I don't know if that encompasses some of the questions you're asking with this policy, which I think it may.
Yes. So you mean the next actual?
The policy that's
Volunteers and then visitors.
Yes, yes, yep. So I didn't see that specific statute section in that. I saw a different statute section regarding school loitering and whatnot. But that would definitely apply to visitors as well, if that's what the policy is. It's just that specific statute section is broader, and so I didn't know if it was just specific to felonies or if misdemeanors were also included, only because.
Yeah, if there's additional information, please
Yeah.
don't hesitate to reach out, because there are statutes that we receive
Yep.
that are added to policies. I'll
Gotcha.
be more than happy to look and
Okay,
see if that does or does not cover that. But
Okay.
with regards to other things besides a felony, and what the second policy that we're about to go over, I'm sorry, the third policy.
yep,
If there is a situation, we do have a system that if there's an event, especially a sexual offense, that comes up. In addition to that, we get information of sexual offenders in the area, and once we get that, the police share that information with us too.
okay, yeah, certainly. Thank you.
Sure.
Any further discussion on this policy? Okay. I have a motion for policy 1212, school volunteers as presented.
Yep.
Okay, so, any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Very well. Second read policy 1250, school visitors. Do I have a motion to accept policy 1250, school visitors? Ken Ziman and Betty? Any discussion on this policy?
So just to, I guess to something we were talking about before, I have a similar concern to what we were just addressing, and I know that was discussed, but that's just another concern regarding visitors, regarding that policy.
And I'll follow up with you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Okay. Standing committees? Finance and Operations, Ms. Riccio.
So the Finance Subcommittee met prior to this meeting. Everything is in order. Our finances are under budget right now, which is great. If we ultimately have a surplus, we'll look at what we're doing with it. But in general, those always fluctuate, but we'll see what happens. The cafeteria numbers continue to be up, which is good. 21st century numbers are also very good. As Dr. Carpetti mentioned, the audit is on time, which always makes me happy. And the grants.
Any questions for Ms. Riccio? Very well. Personnel Policy, Transportation, Mrs. Hadlock.
Our committee has not met recently, so I have to refer to that.
Thank you.
Looking forward to meeting in January.
Thank you, Mrs. Hadlock. Buildings and Grounds, Mr. Cap.
As well, buildings and grounds have not met. We were waiting to see additional board members, new board members joining our committee. So we will be scheduling a meeting for January.
Thank you, Mr. Cap. Curriculum, Mr. Ziman. Did you say legions? That's what I thought you said. Make that. Yeah, yeah. Make sure that's specifically in the notes, Mary, please. They're legions. Legions of fans. Aces, Ms. Riccio.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know Jeff will remember, maybe Betty, when prior, the ACES report was always nothing to report, and then I asked Ms. Riccio to become chairman, or give the report and be our representative at ACES. And I have to say that she has done a wonderful job, and she gives a great report, and ACES is lucky to have her as a chairman. She's going to do a great job there, absolutely great job there.
And they feed us.
Yeah.
We get free lunch, just saying.
Yeah, well, we're going to discuss that with Dr. Scarpetti. All right, one quick thing. Mary, did you get this in the notes? That on behalf of the board, thank you very much for all you've done for all of us on this board, and that we're going to miss you. And we're looking forward to working with Cheryl going forward. All right, so I'm glad to see 2021 in my rearview mirror, to be perfectly honest with you. But we will exit 2021 the same and enter 2022 the same way we exited 2021, with Ms. Riccio making the motion to adjourn the meeting and Mr. Ziman seconding it. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Very well. We are adjourned at 8:24. Thank you.